What's up, guys? I'm Lucas and welcome to Terracotta Aquarium. And I'm excited to share with you guys today the 107-day update on this aquarium right here, my rainbow riverbed. And as you can see, this aquarium has grown in quite a lot since that first video. And a lot of you are here because of that first video and subscribed to the channel because of it. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who watched and subscribed. It means a ton to me. But for those of you who may be new to the channel or might want a little refresher, I think we're going to go back in time, just do a little bit of recap of day 1 to 40 so we can see how I set this thing up, how it looked after 40 days, and then we can compare it to how it looks today on day 107. And then I'm going to go through and talk about all of the fish, how they're doing, talk about all of the plants, and discuss any struggles that I've had along the way. So without further ado, let's go back in time to day 1 of this aquarium. Day 1 of my rainbow riverbed aquarium. I started with this empty, aside from a bit of leftover water, 80-gallon aquarium. I built up the substrate with a bunch of leftover materials from other aquariums. This is a mixture of aqua soil, sand, scatter gravel, and crushed coral. On top of this base layer, I tossed in a whole bunch of fresh aqua soil and added root tabs. Then I capped over the nutrient layer with pool filter and play sand. I tried to get about an inch of coverage over the soil. Then I started building the hardscape. My idea was to create a huge riverbed environment that would be tailored to the community of fish that I had in mind. I used manzanita branches and a couple of pieces of cottonwood that I foraged locally and then treated. I used some large rounded cobbles that I took from my father-in-law's driveway and some river rocks that I bought online. This was the framework for the build. I glued everything together with cotton pads and superglue, and then added a ton of mixed scatter gravel. I went really heavy on the gravel to achieve that rocky riverbed look. I then added a ton of Christmas moss all over the hardscape. It looks awesome now, but my method of attaching it would prove to be inadequate in the long term. After the moss, I started planting. I incorporated a ton of epiphyte plants using a few different varieties of Anubias and Bucephalandra. Then I started planting into the substrate, starting with foreground and midground grasses. I used a mixture of dwarf Sagittaria and Sagittaria subulata. In the background, I planted a bunch of Vallisneria and Hygrophila angustifolia. After finishing with the planting, I filled up the tank and added in the fish. I would have loved to let the tank settle in for a week, but the fish didn't have anywhere else to go and they had spent all day in a bucket. The filter on the tank was cycled, so I didn't expect it to be a problem. I did end up doing daily water changes for the next couple of days because the recycled substrate was leaching some ammonia into the water, but I didn't lose any fish and the tank stabilized in a couple of days. I added some Purigen to the filter because the wood was leaching a ton of tannins, and it did take about a week for the tank to really clear up. 40 days later, however, the tank was crystal clear, and I added the fish that this tank was built for, a beautiful group of 6 rainbowfish. I also added to the group of Danios, adding a group of 10, which brought their numbers up to around 25. I also had 3 Honeygorami fry, a mixed group of 12 Corydoras, and Chester, the blue-eyed lemon pleco. This was all 67 days ago. Let's see how the tank is doing now, on day 107. So this is how the aquarium is looking today. 107 days since the setup, or 67 days since the end of the last video. And as you can see, it has really grown in. The plant growth has just completely exploded, and the fish are also growing super quickly. So I think I want to talk to you guys about the fish first, because I really love watching this aquarium because the fish are just so active. There's always so much going on, and all of them have grown a lot since that last video, and the rainbow fish in particular. We've got 6 of them in here, so 2 Boesemans, 2 turquoise, a yellow Madagascar,
and a crimson spotted rainbow. And thanks to footage missing in the comments of the first video, they told me the name of the crimson spotted rainbow. For some reason, I just have a huge problem remembering the proper name for that one. But they have been doing so well. The turquoise rainbows in particular have grown so much since I added them in here. And it's been interesting to see their kind of hierarchy developing. They don't really have much aggression with each other, but one of the Bosemani's has really established himself as kind of the tank boss. I'll see them kind of occasionally checking each other, checking that hierarchy, not like aggression or anything, but just sort of a little bit of like territorial behavior, which is interesting to see. But the group is really stable. I think that they're doing super well in here. They all look really healthy. And I think that this setup is just perfect for them. And it's so fun to have them because I can always just sit down and watch them explore, interact with each other, and they just add so much to this aquarium. And I haven't named all of the rainbows yet. I don't know if I will or not. One of them does have a name. His name is Walter. One of my friends, like real life friends, he said, I don't know the proper name of any of these rainbow fish, but I really like that one with the red stripe. You can name him Walter. So that's Walter. If you guys have any suggestions for names for the other fish, let me know down in the comments. I'm curious what you guys think. But the rainbow fish have been growing pretty quickly. I'm really excited to see that. Another fish in here that's been growing really quickly is the 3 honey gourami fry, which has been so cool to see because I kind of accidentally bred them myself along with some of the Danios, but we'll get to the Danios in a minute. But it's been really fun to see the little honey gourami fry start to grow up, and their mother passed away maybe a month ago now, so it's exciting to have those 3 fry, in this tank. And their mother was in a separate tank. That's a whole another story that I've gone over in some previous videos. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out the Nature Aquarium update that I did a few weeks back. But it's been really exciting to see them grow up. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep them in here forever. I might move them to some other aquariums. But for now, they have just been thriving in here. It's been really fun to watch them grow up. And the Danios have also been doing really well. I have had a couple of deaths in the Danios, but for the most part, their group is doing really well. There were a couple that just had some, I think, genetic defects or something like that. It wasn't any clear disease that I could see or anything, so could be old age, could be genetics. But for the most part, their group has been doing really well. They love the back of the tank, and I think they have been breeding like crazy in the back because the rainbow fish kind of take up the front of the tank, and then the Danios will come forward for feeding. See, they are kind of hungry at the moment, and I'm right here, so they know there might be food soon. But for the most part, they hang out in the back of the tank, and I can tell that they are just using that area to breed. And sometimes the rainbow fish will go into the back of the tank after what I assume, breeding has happened, and will probably eat up all the babies. So who knows if any of them are surviving or not. That would be really cool because I also accidentally bred a lot of the Danios. And so I'm really hoping that their colony will continue to self-sustain in the long term. And then I can just have, generations and generations of Danios in here. But there are 2 types of Danios. There are zebra Danios and leopard Danios. But if they breed together, I don't really mind. I kind of just want, there to be a great group of Danios in here that self-sustain. So we'll see if that happens, in the long term. But they, I think, are really, really well suited to this tank as well. Just this kind of faster flowing riverbed environment, I think, is really nice for them. But also the Corydoras in here have been doing great. There's 2 types in here, stir-by cories and peppered cories. But I added 1 cory because in my nature aquarium, there was a cory that grew up in there, probably from eggs being on some of the plants that I added to that tank when I set it up. So I did manage to save that cory and move it back into this tank so it's with its family. But I think there's a group of roughly 12 in here now. I think about 6 stir-by and roughly 6 peppered cories. So they, I think, really love this too. There's just so much space for them to forage. And especially now that all of this dwarf sage is growing in, so much little tasty bits get trapped down here in this foreground that I see them all the time, just like this guy right here, just looking for little bits of food and stuff in the front of the aquarium. I love corridoras. They're some of my favorite fish, so of course I've got to have them, in my biggest favorite tank, essentially. And I don't know if we'll see Chester, but Chester is my blue-eyed lemon pleco who lives in here. Chester is actually female as far as I can tell. If I get some footage of her, maybe you guys can confirm for me if she is actually female or if she is a male. But she has grown so much, it's kind of crazy, actually. She is pretty significant compared to her size in the last video. So I think having all of this space for her and all of the wood and everything to kind of constantly have a food source has just made her growth explode. But she is getting to be a big pleco, so that's exciting. But the growth of the fish, is the main kind of crazy thing that's happened. They've all just grown so much. So it's been so fun and exciting to see. But moving on to the plants, there's also been just so much growth. It's crazy. As you can see, compared to the last video, almost all of the foreground is now covered in dwarf Sagittaria. There are areas in each of the corners where it's just starting to grow in, but it has just crept into the foreground and is just growing. So it's only a matter of time until this whole area is covered in dwarf Sagittaria, Sagittaria subulata, and Vallisneria. And you can see that the Vallisneria has crept all the way into the foreground, and it's kind of growing out from behind this manzanita branch here as well. So it has just taken off, and you can see, at the top here, it's kind of curling over on itself. And, Vallisneria usually background plant, but I really like how it looks. I think it actually adds a ton of depth to the aquarium because it's got this big kind of plume right here in the front that kind of leads the eye, further back, and it is just super eye-catching. And it is just a sign of like a really healthy substrate, honestly. Let me know what you guys think of the Vallisneria kind of right in the center here. But I don't think I'm going to touch it until it really becomes like a problem. Like if I can't see the fish, I'll probably take some of it out. Or if I have another project I want to do that needs Vallisneria, I'll come and take a little bit out. I think it adds a lot. I really love just the green, punchy look of this aquarium. And in the background, I have been doing a little bit of trimming and replanting of the Hygrophila angustifolia. I added a little bit to the center, and I've trimmed and replanted a little bit on the side. But I think for the most part, it's doing really well. And that plant is a reason that I added crushed coral to the substrate. I did get 1 or 2 questions about that in the comments in the last video. In the last place that I lived, the water was really soft, so I was in the habit of adding crushed coral to the substrate to kind of increase the hardness of the water a little bit. And I found that the Hygrophila angustifolia that I was using in my aquariums where I lived before, adding crushed coral to the substrate just really helped it grow. And it's a plant that can uptake bicarbonates, which is what crushed coral essentially adds to the water. So that's the main reason I added crushed coral, is because I knew that I was going to be adding a ton of Hygrophila angustifolia. But it's my suspicion that dwarf Sagittaria and Vallisneria also does really well with more bicarbonates in the water. So I think that this is a little bit of an experiment to show that that little bit of increased hardness in the water can lead to these plants growing really well. If you have a different experience, let me know in the comments. It's possible that in my water, regardless of the exact level of hardness or anything, that these plants are just going to grow really well, because I am now in a place that does have slightly harder water. So I think all of these plants are honestly just really well suited to hard water. But either way, it's working really well. I don't know if the crushed coral makes that much of a difference or not. But also you can see that the hydrocotyle tripartita, I got one pot of that for this project, and now I have it sort of dotted all over my studio in different places. But it has just completely exploded. I've been trying to get it to stay in certain areas, but at this point, I'm just letting it do whatever it wants. It's just creeping all over the place. And I really love that texture. That plant has been working so well for me. I've even got it as a carpeting plant in another aquarium that is an upcoming video that I'll show you, when we get there in a couple weeks. But it's doing super well. Love the little texture of it, and this kind of pocket of it back here is just so cool to see. And all of the Anubias and Bucephalandra in here has been doing pretty well for the most part, pretty slow growing. But the two bigger plants that I have, one over here and then one kind of in the background over here, I kind of think of them as like the monstera of the aquarium worlds. Just like these big leaves that just kind of, it grows very similarly to monstera besides like the fenestrations, essentially. Both of them have been doing really well. I kind of want to get one more big piece of Anubias for the center here, but we'll see. I'm going to think about that. I might just completely leave this alone though, because I really want to just see how it develops on its own. But they've been doing really well. They add a nice broader leaf texture, the bigger ones especially, and it's fun to have the little pieces of Bucephalandra growing in here as well. And on the top of the aquarium, I do have a bunch of floating plants. I've added a few red root floaters in as well, just to see how they're going to grow in here, but they haven't been doing particularly well. It might just be a little bit too high flow, or maybe not the right kind of lighting. But the moss on the top logs has kind of been dying back a little bit, which isn't unexpected, but I have this really interesting plant growing out of one of the logs that I foraged locally. So I'm interested to see what that is in the long term. Maybe you guys can tell me what you think that might be. But it's kind of cool to have this unplanned terrestrial plant growing out of that log. So I'm excited to see how much it really does grow. But you guys might notice that there's also not nearly as much moss in here as there was in the previous video. I ended up removing quite a lot of it. There's still some places where there is moss, but like for this rock here and all of these branches in the center, I did remove quite a lot of it. And in that video, I attached all of the moss with like a liquid super glue, which was just inadequate to get it to attach to the hardscape. So since it wasn't attached properly, it just started growing like a ton of algae because I think it was dying, and it was just like a nutrient sponge that the algae could just latch onto. And it was the only thing growing algae. I do have some places where there is a little bit of hair algae in here that's kind of just lingering from the moss. I think it will go away in time now that I've removed those big nutrient sponges. But it was a lesson for me going forward and into my other aquariums that you've really got to take the time to attach moss properly. And I found that using like cotton thread to wrap it onto your hardscape is really the way to go. In the aquariums where I haven't done that and where I've just glued it, it just kind of fails. And maybe that is something to do with my water or something like that, but that's the experience that I've had. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. But since removing a lot of it, there are places where it did naturally adhere, and I think I'll just kind of wait and see how that develops. It's possible that I'll get a decent moss coverage just from the little leftover bits in the long term. It was kind of unfortunate, but also good in a way because it was a really big learning experience for me. So I am happy that I learned that lesson here, rather than having it fail in a bunch of other aquariums. I was able to quickly kind of change the way that I approached it. But that was the only really major problem that I've had with this aquarium, was just that moss-related algae. But since removing it, things are going really well, honestly. But I guess the only other issue that I've had was with a bit of biofilm on the surface. So you might be able to see I have a surface skimmer back here now, which has completely fixed that problem. I don't think I had quite enough surface agitation because the filter that I'm using is an Awase Biomaster 350. And so I think it is slightly under what I want for this aquarium. I think it could use a little bit more flow and a little bit of extra filtration because there is like quite a big bioload in here, even for this size of aquarium. And that filter, I'm essentially cleaning it out every 2 weeks to keep on top of everything. But the surface skimmer has helped quite a bit. It adds just a little bit more surface agitation, and since using it, it's basically completely removed the biofilm. And I'll leave a link to that down in the description, along with everything that I used for this build, essentially, if you want to take a look at any of the specifics. But there's really not a lot of maintenance that I do in general for this tank. Like I said, I'll clean out the filter every 2 weeks or so. Right now I'm doing like a 10% water change every 2 weeks. And I think I could even go down to 3 weeks or even like a month now. Like it's a super, super stable environment. Whenever I test it, like the nitrites aren't even getting that high. I think just all of the plants are just soaking up everything and keeping this aquarium really stable. But I do periodically go in, pick out some of the hair algae that's kind of left over. I feed the fish once a day, and it's a really, honestly, low maintenance aquarium. I think by far out of all the aquariums that I have in my studio right now, this one is the lowest maintenance. And it's kind of my favorite one. I've always wanted an aquarium that is this size, and setting up my new studio here, it was kind of my main goal, was to invest in an aquarium like this, because I really do feel like this is kind of my pride and joy of my studio. And I really love having friends and family over and saying, look at this aquarium, look at it, it's awesome. And then they say, yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's the kind of thing that even people who don't know that much about aquariums or have an idea in their head about like an aquarium, like with pink gravel, no plants, that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that if that's your cup of tea. But I think that this aquarium, for me, it really succeeds in showing people like what a planted tank really can be. And so I think it's really successful because of that. And I think when I have people over to show this to them, it really kind of inspires them and really opens their eyes. So I think I've really succeeded because of that. And that's a big part of why I do YouTube, is that I want to show people that this stuff is cool and it makes me excited, and I want you guys to be excited about. So hopefully you learn something or see something that inspires you when you look at this aquarium and hear me talking about it. And I do like to change things up quite a bit in my studio, change aquarium layouts and that kind of thing. But this aquarium is here to stay. I think as long as I'm in my current space, I'm not going to touch this aquarium. I want to see how this develops in years to come, honestly. So if you want to see that journey, make sure that you like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel so you can keep seeing updates on this aquarium, see me set up other aquariums, etc., and hopefully get inspiration. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Rainbow Riverbed Aquarium. And another big thank you to everyone who watched the first video on this tank. I will leave a link down in the description to it if you want to take a look at that full build. But thanks again for watching, guys. Appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next one.